Hello, Durud and Shalom. Hi.
Hello, hello. How are you today?
Hi. Great, great. So, guys, we have Guy back here. We're going to talk about internal Israeli politics, especially right now about one of the main issues in the upcoming election, which is, I mean, this is always has been a big issue in Israeli politics for a long time now, which is judicial reform. And Guy is going to explain it to us in a very simple way, and then we're going to go into the details. This is a lot of you are focused on what's happening inside Iran. This is actually very connected because what happens in Israel is going to be very influential on what happens in Iran. Would you say that, Guy? Like the upcoming elections in Israel and what happens, would it have an impact over what happens in Iran?
That's a good question. It depends on how good you think Netanyahu's doing in
Mhm,
terms of Iran. So Netanyahu made it like his banner,
mhm.
but I don't think there would be. At least I hope. I hope that this is true. I don't think there would be any prime minister in Israel that would not continue on the track of liberating the Iranian people through Mossad and
Mm.
so on.
But they will have different strategies, no?
Presumably, yeah. Although it might be a Mossad an internal Mossad thing, which
Mm.
they just changed the leader of Mossad, and so that might affect it.
Okay, okay. All right. So can you give us summary of what this issue is in Israel and why is it such a big deal? Why is it like is it accurate to say it's one of the most important political topics, especially coming in the upcoming elections? Is it something that I see Israelis we had the greatest mass protest in the Middle East just in 2024 about it. So I'm assuming this is it continues to be a big deal in Israeli politics.
Yes, this is one. It's arguably one of the things that led to October 7th because of the internal
Ooh.
division created. Um,
Okay, so
and
there's an
so
example. Well, see, this is how I know this will be connected to Iran, because if this led to October 7th, even if that's even a little bit true, October 7th was the catalyst behind
yeah,
everything that followed after, including the current war in Iran. So that's why one way or another it would be connected to Iran.
in general, whatever happens in Israel is going to reflect on what happens in Iran.
There,
That's a
there you go.
fair statement. So this is part of our like series. So the last two live streams we did, we talked about Netanyahu as a figure, and then other topics that this election is going to be about. And this is the only one we haven't gotten to. I spoke about it a little bit after you left, but it deserves way more time and presumably probably its own like episode dedicated to it.
Mhm.
Um, so so here's the thing. In Israel, you have the parliament, you have the judiciary, and the government, the executive, is selected from within the parliament. And you only have one house in parliament. So you have 120 members. From them, the government is selected. That creates a structural issue in terms of executive power because the executive almost by default controls the legislative.
Mhm.
Does that statement make sense, or do I need
So you
to
have one
elaborate?
house. You don't have two houses. You have
Right.
one house,
Yes.
and because the head of the executive branch comes from the parliament, the Knesset, um, therefore, so basically, the leader of the executive branch is also the leader of the legislative branch. Is that how it works?
Not exactly. The leader of the executive branch is usually the person is one member of the legislative branch that manages to get a majority of people to support them from within
Hmm.
the legislative. And so by default, they have a majority in the legislative.
Okay, that makes sense. They have a lot of influence. Before we get into this detail, should I just give a short summary of what the situation is? before you go into this much detail, because I think we're getting into a lot of detail. Let me just give quickly.
Maybe
Yeah.
I thought maybe this like understanding the inherent structural difficulty. So let me go a bit more, and then we can talk. And this is actually more high level than the detail you're going to give, and I think like it gives you the core of what the tension is. So because of this inherent extra power that the executive has, that isn't properly balanced by the legislative, over the years, the judiciary took more and more powers upon itself in order to be able to hold the executive to account. But that power was not bestowed, and this is controversial, but I won't get into the details yet. Was not bestowed upon it by the legislative or the executive, and so it managed to get to a point where it has the final say on any legislative decision without having the accountability of being elected. So that's the background. That's the situation we're in before the judicial reform was enacted. So you have a very strong executive, and to balance it out, the legislative became even stronger, but is also unaccountable because like these people aren't elected by the.
You mean the judiciary? Yes. Okay. So let me actually simplify what you're saying. Okay, so guys, the executive is Prime Minister Netanyahu and his cabinet, right? The legislative, which they pass the laws, is the parliament, which in Israel they call the Knesset. The judiciary is basically the courts, the highest courts, and they are not elected by the people, right? So the executive are chosen by the people, the legislative, the Knesset are chosen by the people, the judiciary are not chosen by the people, okay? So the power of the legislative, the people who pass come up with the laws, was getting so high that the high courts, the judiciary was supposed to act as a counterbalance to that, to limit their power. But people are finding that, who are against this, are finding it undemocratic because the judiciary is not elected by the people. So they're saying basically, why do some people who we have not chosen are making decisions for what laws can get passed? The people have made their decisions known by electing the members of the parliament, the members of the Knesset. So get up, let people get what they want. Stop, get out of the way, basically. Stop interfering. Is it okay? I do think that the summary that I have is helpful.
I think now that we gave this background, and also just as a little bit of emphasis, the judiciary took this power upon itself over the years through court decisions. This was not something that the legislative agreed to. Like he said, yes, we have too much power. We're going to bestow some of it to the judiciary. And now that we have this background for what the tension is, I think now it would be better to read the summary of the decisions.
Let me actually write down my questions because I'm going to ask you these after I read the summary. Okay, so guys, quick summary. Israel's government, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, has been pushing to limit the power of the Supreme Court, basically the judiciary. The goal is to give politicians more control over legal appointments and government decisions, which the current coalition believes are too heavily influenced by unelected judges. So here are the two events that happened before 2023 and 2024. Okay, 2023, the proposed reform sparked the largest mass protests in Israel's history. Despite the backlash, the government passed a key law limiting the Supreme Court's power to strike down government's decisions deemed unreasonable. That was in 2023. In January 2024, we have this. In a historic bombshell, the Supreme Court struck down that very law, ruling that it harmed Israel's core identity as a democratic state. And so the people against that, they were like, what are you talking about? It will be more democratic if people's votes are not struck down by judges who are not elected. So here's some recent update.
There's one clarification for this point before we move on to the next one. For what's the issue with unreasonable, like with the reasonableness clause? The problem with it is that it has no clear criteria, and as a result, it's basically up to the judge's personal, subjective opinion whether something is reasonable or not. And this comes from British law. Yeah.
This is the cost of not having a constitution, right?
So that's also something that has been discussed as a result. Israel tried to enact a constitution; it just failed repeatedly. Okay. So the Knesset, Knesset technically is also supposed to be people.
Let me go through the rest, and then we go more detail. Okay, so just quick. I'm almost done. Right after being sidelined by the war in Gaza, the judicial battle is back in full force. Facing potential early elections, well, not really early, but okay, this year, the government is rushing to pass new laws. So one, there's 3 issues here: splitting the attorney general, controlling police investigations, and the Haredi draft crisis. So let's go through each one of them. So splitting the attorney general, the Knesset, basically Israel's parliament, recently advanced a highly controversial bill to split the attorney general's role in 2. Critics argue this is designed to severely weaken the main legal check on the government and turn the role into a political puppet. So that's number 1. 2, controlling police investigations. On June 11, 2026, the Knesset passed a law giving the justice minister, okay, direct control over the department that investigates police misconduct. So the minister means that it's not part of the judiciary, it's part of the executive branch, right? This removing it from the authority of independent prosecutors. So that's 2. Number 3, the Haredi draft crisis. The judicial fight is heavily tied to the Supreme Court continually striking down military draft exemptions for ultra-Orthodox men, deeply frustrating Netanyahu's religious coalition partners. Is that all fair?
Yep.
Okay, so my first question: how are the judges picked? Like if they're not elected?
Okay. Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's a key part of the issue. And this debate has been going on and off for almost 30 years. So the judicial overreach, as some would call it, started in the 1990s. There was the head of the judiciary called Aharon Barak. Actually, I think it wasn't a head yet, but he over time would be the head. He started enacting. He and people around him started enacting decisions that treated. So Israel doesn't have a constitution. So instead, what they do is they have like a living constitution, meaning that over every so often they legislate what's called a basic law. A basic law would be like a proto article of the Constitution, but it's non-binding until the Constitution is actually like finalized, which is supposed to happen down the line. So this started with the judiciary saying that, well, you have basic laws, and basic laws are supposed to be part of the future Constitution. Therefore, ipso facto, the legislative has actually given us power to strike down regular laws based on basic laws. So, like, if this,
but how are the judges picked? Like, but before we go to that, like, can you tell me how are the judges picked? Like, who picks them?
So right now, so before, this was one of the things that changed, but before this happened, you had a committee that had 3 Supreme Court justices, 3 members of Knesset, 2 from the coalition, 1 from the opposition, and 2 lawyers from the National Legal Union, the Union of Lawyers.
Okay.
And this was already something that has changed. Like that was supposed to be something that would make it balanced in a way that would allow the picking of the justices to be not completely political, but at the same time not completely divorced from the choice of the public. The problem, the coalition claims, is as follows: the judges have their own bias. They want their right now we have like an activist. Most of the judges are activists. Activists meaning they're not just going to adjudicate based on the letter of the law, but also like the spirit of the law as they interpret it. They're not conservative in the legal sense. Conservative in the legal sense means stick to the letter of the law. And so they have an interest of keeping like-minded people in the judiciary. The people from the lawyers' union are actually very much intertwined with the justices because they know them, because they like often hold case before them and so on. And so practically speaking, they end up being de facto extra votes for the judges.
And they're more left-leaning, is that correct?
So the judges, again, so now I'm putting on my coalition hat. The judges are by and large left-leaning. Some of them are not, but the claim would be that the vast majority of them, if they were in a party, that would be like Meretz, which is a party that's on the verge of the threshold. Usually, they're not part of the Democrats. You can go back to previous live streams when we talked about the Democrats. But they're like the farthest left a Zionist party goes. They're like the most far left Zionist party. That's still a Zionist party.
I mean, I hope wouldn't Zionist just means patriotic in Israel?
So yeah. Basically, that wants to maintain the Zionist wants to maintain the identity of Israel as a Jewish democratic state.
That makes them extremely leftist. So you're saying if they were even, they would be anti-Israel if they were just a little bit more left. That's concerning. So you're saying they're so left that if they were just a little bit more left, it would be anti-Israeli.
That's what the coalition is saying. Okay. So I'm going to be careful here. I personally think there's a reasonable amount of truth to it, but it's also a bit more complicated. You also have justices that aren't that way. But by and large, I think it's fair to say that they're significantly more to the left than the populace.
Okay, so I see the concern of the coalition. Do you think that they're more left than the populace?
Yeah. I think that's fair, and I doubt many people would argue that against that in good faith. If someone wants to,
so they don't reflect Israel. So they don't reflect Israel.
Yeah. So the justices don't reflect the opinions of the diverse positions of the public in Israel. Just as a point of example, there have been Arab justices, but there has never been. I believe, if I'm wrong on this, someone feel free to correct me. There has never been a Mizrahi justice in the Supreme Court, which is 50% of Israel of the Jews in Israel. So that would be one of the claims.
There are a bunch of elitist leftists who think that they know better than the Israelis, and they're trying to save the people from their own decisions, from their own. They're pretty.
That would be what the coalition's position would be.
But isn't that the correct position based on what you're saying? That's what I'm getting.
I really try to avoid saying, but this is the actual reality. Don't listen to all this is what's really true. I'll give you all positions. I'll say what I think. But I want to be careful not to say yes, that's actually and I don't want to say something that people on the left would, for example, say, "Oh, well, he's not being fair about this."
Okay.
But if Loy is saying this, because Loy is against the current coalition, Loy just said yes, they are, as you pointed out,
Oh.
and he made an interesting comment earlier. Where was it? See if I can find it. Yeah, it's just, it was way back, so I'm scrolling. Okay, here we go. So although the judiciary system is bad in Israel, the suggested quote-unquote reform is just an excuse to discredit the system and create chaos around it. So this is not a person who's pro the reform, but if this person is saying that, yes, Armin, you're correct, then I feel comfortable saying that yes.
So okay. So people, there are many people who want reform, but not the reform that the coalition is suggesting. Like, so many Israelis are like, yes, the current situations with the judicial branch is messed up, but the solutions that is being offered to fix it by the coalition is wrong. Is that a good understanding?
That would be a very common statement on the more. You don't have to be far left, but like on the more solid left, like not center left, but actual left. What they'd also say, no, this is fine. Like, that's, the judiciary should have a lot of power, and it should be like filtered in who can be there.
Yeah, but the filter is wrong. I agree with that. I mean, I don't believe in absolute democracy. I believe that you need to have checks and balances. I believe that you need to have a strong judicial branch that limits the power of the voters so that you don't have a tyranny of the majority. I believe in a republic, not an absolute democracy. In a republic, you have the judiciary limiting what the majority could pass into law. So obviously, I do believe in having a strong judiciary, but it's important in how that judiciary comes about, and how does it get its power. Like, it's important to do it the right way. Yeah,
I agree. So before we finish talking about the committee, Fleshy Interloper said, okay, basic question: what's Mizrahi? SP. Do you know what SP means?
No, I don't know what SP means.
Okay, so I assume the question is, what's Mizrahi? So Israeli Jews, and Jews in general, you largely have like two. I'm simplifying, but you have two ethnic tracks. One would be the Ashkenazi Jews, which are Jews that immigrated to Europe and then stayed in Europe for a couple thousand years. And the other would be Jews that emigrated to either Africa or Arab countries. And those would be the Mizrahi. Mizrach means east. And so those would be like...
Let me just simplify it before you go into details, okay? So Ashkenazi Jews are Jews in Israel who came from Europe. Mizrahi Jews are Jews in Israel who came from the Middle East. And some in Israel, we had a history of many people saying that Ashkenazi Jews are racist to Mizrahi Jews, and some people say that Ashkenazi Jews treat Mizrahi Jews as if they're just Arabs, and they look down upon them because they came from the Middle East. Is that fair? Is that a fair summary? I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's to understand. Yeah, go
on. And the founding of the country was done by Ashkenazi Jews who came from Europe, so Herzl and Ben Gurion and so on. Those were Ashkenazi Jews, and then after the state was created, they brought in waves of immigration from the Arab-speaking countries, and so they also, there's a feeling of like, we built this country, and for some reason it's like you owe us for letting you come.
So here's another summary: Mizrahi Jews are brown, Ashkenazi Jews are white. There you go. There's a summary.
Okay.
And we should do the super chats really quickly. Okay. So Sayed is saying, is the super chat counter broken? Let's fix it. Well, you fixed it. Thank you. It's working. Thank you. And then Erickson is saying, some are paid by Soros through New Israel Fund. Is that true?
Do Do you want me to explain what that means?
Very short, if you can. Very like in one
Yeah.
sentence.
So the New Israel Fund, in Hebrew they call it the new fund for Israel, but the name is ambiguous and it's like the New Israel. The claim would be that this is a left-wing fund trying to change the positions within Israel, trying to they have a lot of budgets, some of which are from Soros, and they do a lot to try to like not manufacture, but like shift positions in Israel more to the left.
And who's paid by them? The judges? That's the allegation that the judge who's paid by the Soros.
So I'm not sure who this is, who the
Okay.
claim is that are paid for, because I don't know when this was. It depends. They also have like workshops, and so maybe that's what and maybe judges were in the workshops, and that's maybe
Okay.
that's
Okay.
the implication.
So we keep that in mind, the New Israel Fund. And then Fleshy Interloper saying judicial reform versus second chamber. What is this referring to?
So I assume second chamber would be like having two houses.
Oh,
Fleshy Interloper, correct me if I'm wrong. So judicial reform. So I think so. I'm pro second chamber. That's an idea that recently came up for the first time. For
so let's talk about the second chamber
this.
maybe at another.
Yeah.
Because that would be a reform to the legislative branch rather than the judicial branch. So we could talk about that later. And thank you. That's interesting. I didn't know that's even a discussion. Texas saying that's the American system. You know, I like the American system because let me know what do you think about this guy. I think that we have three branches of the government, and I think all of them need to, one way or another, reflect the will of the people, but one of them are more sticky. Some of them are more sticky than the others, right? So how could you? This is the what needs to be solved, right? Because you want the state to be a reflection of the nation. That's what you want, okay? But you also want certain principles that have empirically shown to be effective, not to be easily changed by the voters, like certain things that are. So this is basically the challenge between the level of progressive and conservative, right? So if you're more progressive, you would want things to just keep changing as soon as with the times, like immediately, right? Like just the people could just be like vote in and change things. If you're more conservative, you want to be like things are good, don't change it, these are the principles that work, don't touch it, right? So, and I think every country needs to have a balance of both. The more democratic you are, the more people get to change things instead of like preserving them, and the more conservative you are, you want to make sure that the principles that actually have been proven to work, not to just be immediately changed just because people are voting a different way. And that's why and it's interesting because now in Israel, the people who are more on the right are more interested in making things more democratic, right? Which goes against the definition of conservative and progressive. But it's like that's irony. We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah,
but I think the
judiciary is interested in changing things.
Yeah, it's interesting.
They're not conservative judges.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I think United States has managed this balance perfectly, right? So the Constitution conserves the values that has made America such a great country, and they have found the right balance in how difficult. Like you can change the Constitution, but it's difficult. The level of difficulty is, I think, exactly right in the United States. And then you have Supreme Court judges who are indirectly chosen by the people, because the people choose the president and the president chooses the Supreme Court judges. But because the position are lifelong, the presidents have very small opportunities to make those decisions. So it's basically sticky enough, you know what I mean? So it's still, the Supreme Court judges are still a reflection of the people, but it's hard, like it's difficult, like it's a delayed reflection of the people, you know what I mean? And I think that's why I think United States has the exact right system on how to make this balance between democracy and a republic that limits democracy work. Do you agree that the United States has found the perfect balance in this?
I don't know if it's perfect, but
Close.
it's at the very least it's in the right direction. Like you want things to be able to. It shouldn't be a binary of like you either can change it or you can't. You want things to be able to change, but you also want to put frictions in front of change so that it has to be a strong enough like want to change it in the public that would reflect that okay, it's actually probably something that actually should change. So that underlying principle you can implement it in several ways, but I think that is true and something that should be that should be implemented some one way or another. And right now in Israel, it isn't.
Okay, so we have a super chat. Do you want to respond to this? Thank you.
All right. So biggest problem, I went into this briefly before. Biggest problem is Barak's. So this is JGMVDS. Biggest problem is Barak's reasonably doctrine. Basically, judges can make stuff up, ignore precedent, and contradict themselves. Also, we don't have. I assume this was meant to be juries. This is true. I mean, it's put in a very, one-sided way. But the reasonability or reasonableness doctrine that was recently struck down by and then consequently the Supreme Court overruled that striking down, means that the judges can, if they deem a decision to be unreasonable, they can strike it down. And originally this comes from British law, and it's supposed to be like a very, very rare thing. And in Israel, it's not a rare thing at all. They just so
they could just willy-nilly decide like there's nothing that they have to abide by. There's no document that they have to use. They could be like, I find this unreasonable, and that's it.
Correct. Yes.
Well,
in
that's
principle,
insane.
yes.
That is insane.
And that is what the law to remove the unreasonableness clause did. The argument was, well, if something is problematic, then there should be something in the laws that makes it problematic, so you can just refer to that thing as opposed to just the unreasonable.
It's almost as if having a constitution would help. Almost as if.
Yes.
Okay.
That is true, and that's one of the suggested solutions. It would still be hard to put together a constitution, but that would make it easier.
Do you think this live stream is going to make more Americans appreciate their constitution? The fact that
I hope so. I hope so, because you can see just how shaky of a ground you can get to in a democracy when you don't have a constitution, or you don't have like very clear principles that are the vector that defines your country.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And somebody was asking the same question that you start. You need a constitution.
So does Israel have a constitution? So no, that's basically what we just said. Another one.
Start something.
Yeah,
it's okay. No, go ahead.
So there was a comment that said majority tyranny, which is.
Let me go find it.
Okay.
Oh, here, found it. Okay, yeah, this person Alex didn't even stay around to see our answer. So I said we don't want the whole point. Like I said we don't want the tyranny of the majority, and this person saying, "What a crazy statement! Majority tyranny? Bye." Well, Alex, that's the whole avoiding having the majority of tyranny is the whole point of having a constitution. Is the whole point of having the judicial branch. It's the whole point of having a republic rather than a full democracy. Like a crazy statement. This is the whole. This is the Enlightenment values. This is everything that came out of. This is what the founding fathers of the United States believe in. This is what every country that has a constitution believe in. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, go ahead.
So there's context here that's important. I completely understand why Alex is saying what he is saying. I assume it's a he. This puts you, Armin, in odds with the, let's call them hardliners that are pro judicial reform. because the claim they're making is, well, democracy is literally rule of the majority. Therefore, whatever the majority decides goes. And so we should give the legislative slash executive as much power as we can, as opposed to unelected official, because elected officials are beholden to the positions of the people.
That's the definition of absolute democracy, not just being democratic. Okay, but no country absolute democracy.
I also agree with that.
Okay,
I'm just saying. So this would be a common position in Israel from the people who are pro the reform.
Yeah, so people need to understand that no country has absolute democracy, and absolute democracy is not a good thing. People think like democracy good, so more democracy better. It doesn't work like that. It's almost as if saying drinking water is good, so let me drink, I don't know, 10 gallons of water every day, you'll die, right? So just because drinking water is good for you, it doesn't mean that the maximum amount of it is a good thing for you. You need some level of democracy. This is what Alex, I mean, you already said bye. Which founding father of the United States said that like I give you a republic, not a democracy? Like, what is it? Like, I don't know who said that, but one of the founding fathers has said United States, for example, is not an absolute democracy, it's a republic. You don't want the tyranny of the majority. I mean, has anybody heard about minority rights? Minority rights basically means that the majority doesn't get to impose its will on the minority. The minority rights, that means that you have certain principles that the majority cannot vote out. So guys, if you believe in majority rule all the time, you're basically saying if the majority, for example, votes in for slavery to be legalized, we have to accept that. That's what you're saying. If, for example, the majority says that.
So what you just did so far in this live stream is anger a large portion of the people on both sides. Because, and I agree with everything you said, for the record. You do need checks and balances, and just majority rule or majority vote is not, like, you should have some guardrails against that that are extra extra vote, meaning beyond the voter. At the same time, you can't have a judiciary that is completely unaccountable to anything. Can keep putting people it wants in itself, and just make the final decision on everything.
So guy, this is the belief. This comes from the belief that the majority could be wrong in the short term, but they are correct in the long term. They're you know what I mean? This requires for you to have some belief that the wisdom of the crowd takes a society in the right direction, even if it makes short-term mistakes. Long term, it makes the correct decisions, right? So that means that you need to allow the crowd to make decisions on some issues on a regular basis in short-term periods, right? So, for example, they elect the president, the representatives that make the laws, but on main principles, you still want to give it to them, but you need to make it difficult. Because on principles, you don't want to let the wisdom of the crowd to make decisions on a regular basis. You want them to make decisions on a more longer term basis, because that will adjust. That will basically adjust against the short term mistakes that they're making.
I completely agree. You can think of it like in terms of it hits the signal, like the majority position hits the signal, but through a lot of noise. So over enough time, it's going to hit the signal, but it's going to make a lot of noise, a lot of mistakes in either direction along the way.
Exactly. So you need the judiciary to be still a reflection of the people, but but with a huge delay and with much more difficulty, right? And I think right now in Israel, your judiciary is not a reflection of the people at all, because they are basically making the decisions on their own. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think United States, for example, go on.
So then the people who are for the judiciary in its current form would say something along the lines of, it's a good thing that they don't reflect the current widely held public opinion in Israel, because widely held public opinion in Israel is inhumane and undemocratic. And so if we want to maintain the democracy, we need to ensure that we have people who have who uphold liberal democracy as a virtue, that are able to check the decisions made by the unwashed masses.
But unwashed masses. Okay, but how do we know that you have this right? Like, who gets to decide that you have managed to figure out what?
What do you mean? I do. I'm pro-liberal democracy. I'm the one who decides what that means and what the values are. Again, that's what they would say.
Yeah, so this is circular. Like,
I know
there's no check. Like, the people who want checks and balances for Israel, they don't have checks and balances upon themselves.
See, yes. So to make a better defense of them, they would say, like, all of the enlightened world holds these values, but most Israelis don't. And because we want to be part of the enlightened world, we need to uphold those values. For example, vis-a-vis Palestinians and how we treat them.
Okay, but the Enlightenment values through your personal interpretation is not the same thing.
That would be what I would say as well.
Right.
And looking at people from outside of Israel that don't have as much of a resolution for what happens in Israel, and don't have all the relevant variables and thought processes, they might not necessarily. They might have a surface level position that sounds right, but it might not be right, even if the majority of the people outside of Israel hold this position.
So let's oh, wait, hold on. Let me start some questions.
Yeah,
do you want to
there's
go
a
through
bunch of stuff we should probably
super chat and also questions that I'm going to start.
Okay, so I'll start with, we need age limits on the Supreme Court in the U.S., Shauna says. I don't know enough about, okay. I think you also mean term limits, because right now you're in the Supreme Court until you die, right? In the U.S. And then sometimes you a president hits a jackpot and oh yay, several justices died under my watch. Now I get to pick the Supreme Court justices, and then you have a skewed Supreme Court. And I would agree. I'd say maybe 18 years, and then you also have a stipend for life, so you don't have to work anymore, so you don't have any conflict of interest.
I don't know if that. Okay, so Shauna, you might be correct, but also let's consider that if you have age limits or term limits, that might make the process of changing the judges in the Supreme Court too fast. Maybe United States has the right balance of the delay on how the voter base can affect the Supreme Court. Maybe this is the perfect balance, and maybe if you get rid of them faster, then the effect of the voter base on the Supreme Court would be too much, and you're moving too closer to an absolute democracy rather than a republic. You want it to be, so there's a balance, right? We want to make sure that the American voters have control over the state, but not too immediate. So things that are working will become more difficult to change. And maybe with the Supreme Court, the United States has actually managed to reach that perfect balance. But I don't know. Maybe you're right. But we have to consider.
I would argue against that. That while that could be true, you can solve it by choosing what the term limit is. So I said 18 years. It could be 24. It can be however long you want. The issue is that you want some sort of predictability in how many justices are replaced each term.
But maybe the randomness of it also is a feature on the bug. The unpredictability of it also might be the inability for the executive branch to make plans will limit, might be a feature rather than a bug.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. Okay.
Next we have Black Cricket saying, JH, where are you? I'm lonely. I have no idea what this is referring to.
Oh, the Jew hate her. We had a Jew.
The one from Ali's stream. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I like making money. So
yeah.
So if he'd be here, we'd make bank. And of course, I like making
Yes.
money. I'm Jewish. Yeah.
Unlike other people who don't like making money.
Okay. And then a citizen 1160 says Israel is one dictator away from chaos by the sounds. So many people would agree and even go further in saying and would say Netanyahu is that dictator. And we're now trying to stop him from running away from the trial because he's on trial right now while his government is enacting judicial reform. So there's a conflict of interest there. And by the way, because of that conflict of interest, he was not allowed to do anything about regarding the reform. And then people say, well, it's a joke because he controls the coalition. So the coalition does stuff, and but like it's according to his will, even if he's not part of it. And the answer to that would be, well, Levin, who made the reform, has been advocating for this reform more or less for over 20 years, well before Netanyahu had his court.
Right now the situation seems a lot circular. So the Knesset is voting to limit the judiciary, and the judiciary comes out and says, well, that's illegal. I'm not going to let you do that. Right. So they're like, I limit you. Like, no, I limit you. So who has that? Like, how does that work in Israel? Like, who gets to, if your parliament is passing laws to limit the judiciary, and the judiciary like comes out and is like, well, I deem that to be illegal, I'm not going to allow that. So how do you solve this?
And then the legislative says, well, I don't recognize your ability to deem this legal or illegal because you're not. What we're saying is that this is not allowed, and so this is what's called a constitutional crisis. Israel is now has been over the last 3 years in under a constitutional crisis.
So basically what's happening is that the parliament is passing the law to limit the judiciary, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is like, well, I'm going to say that your law is illegal. And then the parliament could say, well, I'm going to pass a law that says that you can say that what I'm saying is illegal. Right? Is that and then the judiciary like, well, I'm going to say that's also illegal.
Yes.
This is the political version of like, no, you, right? This is
basically yes.
Right. Okay.
Or a game where like the kids make the rules and then like I just decided I can do this. Oh yeah, well I just decided I can counter it like this.
Yeah. I shoot you. Well, I have bulletproof vest. Well, I have a gun that goes through that. Well, I have another chest that doesn't, another armor that makes you not be able to go through that. Yeah, okay, yeah, this is exactly. I remember this. This is nostalgic.
Okay, and next another comment from a citizen 1160. Is there a push to get a constitution within Israel? Yes, that is one of the things that is being suggested as a way out of this. It would be hard to get through properly, but this is advocated from some like center parties, that this would be like a way around it, but those parties are absolutely against the reform as it was suggested. Because
it kind of sounds like the current reform that is being suggested. It kind of sounds like the current reform that is being suggested is not a good reform and is getting in the way from an actual good reform. Is that accurate?
So I would say so. It's a bit tough. I think the reform by itself is probably fine, but it was done in a way where you do several things at once. So we talked about being conservative versus this is not a conservative reform. This is we're going to change the regime structure in Israel fundamentally in a way that still fits with some very well regarded democracies. So this is fundamentally not different than from, for example, New Zealand, which also has one house, and also the Supreme Court can't overrule decisions, but they have some regional. Like the one difference is that they have regional representatives as opposed to party representatives, or they have a mixture, and so there's like some balancing there, arguably. But New Zealand is ranked as like the second most democratic state by a democracy index, and so but arguably by itself in a vacuum, the reform would be fine, but people don't trust this government to do it. One, because Netanyahu is on trial right now, and two, because we don't have like New Zealand is easy, and they have minority protection laws and so on, and we have a war, an ongoing war with the Palestinians, and who are at the same time a minority that we also have to protect. And so what works for New Zealand is not necessarily going to work for us, and we need better guardrails against the majority in our system. Those would be like the two positions.
So that gives me a couple of questions, and then we have to go through all the super chats and questions. First of all, it seems to me that the fix is not to limit the power of the judges, but to change the way that the judges are chosen. That seemed like the fix. That seemed like it should be the fix instead of the fix that they're going with.
So that's part of the fix. At the end of the day, that's like the biggest pain point, or that's the point that's the most contested, because what they wanted to do. So and this is a point where I'm on the side of the government. So if it sounds like I'm making the government sound reasonable, it's because that's what I think. I can try to offer the counterpoint, but just know ahead of time, this is where I stand, and that's my bias. That was the biggest pain point. There were a lot of discussions about that. And so the first offer was like, okay, well, we'll give the coalition a standing majority that always stands. And that was, people were against that. And that was probably very likely like a point that was put in there in order to be taken out, and then you hit on a compromise. I don't think that's what they intended to do, but that is too much. So then another offer was, okay, well, at the very least, let's put the power in the hands of the people. So we'll have the coalition. We'll have a committee made by coalition and opposition, and the coalition gets to choose the first justice in its term. So it's between 2 to 4 justices change each term. Coalition chooses the first one, opposition chooses the second one, coalition chooses the third one, opposition chooses the fourth one. So the coalition gets precedent, but you can argue it's justifiable because you also have the majority. That was also completely refused by the protesters outside, and there were a couple of other points. Eventually, what happened is that someone from the opposition joined the coalition, and they hit on something that's more or less along the lines of what I just said, meaning that the coalition now there are still justices in the committee.
I think we're getting into a little bit too much detail regarding. So the summary of it is that it's a mix of limitations, and different suggestions were made on how to pick the judges.
The key principle is whether the judges get to choose themselves. Like, it was okay for the opposition to get to choose from the judges. It's not okay for the judges to perpetually replace themselves with like-minded.
So that seems like something everybody should agree with, that the judges shouldn't be able to perpetually just choose themselves. So why is there disagreement on this?
I agree with that. That's when it started becoming political, like in the narrow sense. We don't want you to have a win, and we don't trust you, and whatever you do, we're going to call it a dictatorship. Even though to me that sounds like a reasonable suggestion. Or they said something along the lines of, "Oh, well, you'll choose the first one, and then you'll go have an election immediately, so you can choose the other one after that," which is dumb because you don't want to have an election each year. Like, that's a huge risk for a coalition.
Is a lot of this because of, not necessarily because the reform is it, how accurate is this? The reform suggestions are actually not that bad, but the people who are protesting don't trust it because they think that Bibi is on trial and he's suggesting these reforms based on what he thinks will keep him out of jail. That's why the people mistrust whatever reforms coming from his coalition.
I think that's almost accurate. Another thing is that because it was done with a blitz, like, we're going to do these 4 things first, and then we're going to move on maybe to other things. And this was done because they needed to be able to overrule the Supreme Court in order to pass their ultra-Orthodox exemptions, which the Supreme Court would have struck down. Like they had to do that for narrow political reasons for the ultra-Orthodox because they made promises to the ultra-Orthodox. So they had to do it all very quickly. And that looked like a coup.
Okay. All right. Looked like a coup against the Supreme Court.
Yeah, against the regime as it stands. We're going to quickly make a bunch of changes to the rules, and then it like reminded people of Nazi Germany or Iran, where you have like someone who's elected or chosen by the people, but then they change the way elections are run, and so you started. This was a democratically elected government that. And because of the way certain people on the left see certain people on the right, that sounds exactly like them. They're fascist theocrats.
Yeah. Who chooses how the elections are run?
So the election. That's a good point. Good question. I think I've never seen anyone try to change that. But they like one of the claims was, oh, they'll cancel the elections.
Well, who can decide that?
So in theory, the parliament can make decisions like that.
Okay, so basically, let me step back a bit. So basically, the Israelis who are worried that their country is going to turn into a dictatorship, they're trying to get the Supreme Court to stop the executive and the legislative branch from getting too much power, right? And they think that the executive branch and the legislative branch, if they are successful in removing the limitations of the judiciary branch, they will have all the powers, and with no limitations, they could change the elections. They could change how people pick their representatives to a point where they're not even accountable to the people anymore. That's what they're afraid of.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's a really good summary. Do you want? I need to do a bio break really quickly. Can you keep answering the questions and the super chats?
Yes.
That we have.
And at the same time, we should probably take this time to do this, guys. If you don't know, so I have a channel. I'm going to post a bunch of stuff. So a lot of it is going to be with Armin, but some of it is going to be without Armin, and a bunch of videos explaining Israel and the different topics, things that are going on within Israel, sometimes fighting misconceptions about Israel. And depending on the what the people think, I could also go into philosophy and epistemology. Last time we went into it, Armin and I, and it seemed to go on to the audience seemed to be receptive to it.
Yes.
But yeah, so I highly recommend you subscribe to my channel, completely unbiased opinion, and if you want to hear more about Israel.
All right, I put the link in the chat for you guys.
Great.
The link is also in the description. All right, so
awesome. Go ahead, and I'll go through the comments. So Bomber of Doom says, when was there ever a good time for Israel to draft a constitution? I agree with that. Like, that's basically why we don't have a constitution. There was never a good time. That said, this doesn't agree that they'll manage to do it. It doesn't guarantee that they'll manage to do it if they try, just because, well, they have to do it at some point. That's true, but if you don't succeed, like if you can't get enough people to sign off on a document, it can't be reasonably called a constitution. You need to have, let's say, a 2/3 majority or something along those lines. And if you can't get that, then there's like, even if you need to do it at some point, like you also need to get it through when you do. So I agree with that. It just doesn't solve the problems that caused this to be the case. Next, we have Roy saying minority rights equals democracy, not majority rule. That's not true. I mean, they're both democracy. Minority rights equals democracy is something that no one outside of Israel says. This is like that position by the Israeli left is unique and not shared by basically anyone outside of Israel.
So let me actually tell you how it actually works. Okay, so minority rights is not democracy. Minority rights is a limitation on democracy.
Yes.
Okay. And it improves democracy. Okay. So minority rights is a limitation on democracy, and it improves the quality of them. It reduces the quantity of democracy, and it increases the quality of your democracy. Is that fair to say? So minority rights means limitations on what the majority gets to decide for the minority. That's what it means. And because it's a limitation on what the majority gets to say, it's a limitation on democracy, which is a good thing. Oh, I say yes, you are correct. Okay, so you agree.
So and this view comes from, let me put it up again. This view comes from Aharon Barak, was the head of the Supreme Court, who basically made this initial, what the right would call regime change, by making the judiciary, putting it above the executive and the legislative. He made the argument that democracy without the liberal values is like a glass without its contents. So like it's very narrow, it's very empty, and so it practically, like essentially like in the sense of essence, like the essence of democracy is all of those things. And so right now, the people who are by their own account defending democracy, that like they're defending the liberal democratic values of the enlightened West, as instantiated in Israel. Parentheses, we saw that there was a party called the Democrats. That's what they're about. They are about preserving these principles the way they interpret them, which is in a leftist bend.
We need to be careful, because a lot of the left is really good in trying to pretend that these are leftist values, and when we're talking about classical liberal values, and unfortunately, when the left steals this vocabulary from us, it has an impact. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then the right will see that language and they think that these words are for them and we should be against them, right? So, and because the word liberal is in many Western countries associated with leftists, this makes our job very difficult. And that's why so many people try to mention classical liberal instead of liberal, right? Because these classical liberal values are pretty right-leaning, in my opinion, actually. And by making a lot of right-leaning people think that this is a leftist position, they might end up supporting anti-enlightenment, anti-Western Enlightenment values, because they think that this is a leftist thing, which is not, right? So the way you need to categorize it, in my opinion, is that a republic. Okay, so we have liberal democracies. Okay, so we have republic democracies. A republic is a limitation on democracy, meaning that there are certain rules that cannot be changed by the majority, or we make it very difficult for the majority to change. That makes you a republic, which means that you're not an absolute democracy, right? Which no country is. And then we have liberal democracies, are types of republics that the limitation on democracy is based on classical liberal values, right? So we have liberal democracies. Liberal democracy, a republic is a subcategory of democracies. A limited democracy. A liberal democracy is a subcategory of a republic. It's a republic that the limitations on majority rules are based on the classical liberal values. And that's what your aim is, to be and what history shows and what empirical evidence shows is that liberal democracies are the best form of governance to have. And again, liberal democracy, we're talking about classical liberal values. We're not talking about leftist values. Okay, this is the way I look at it. Do you agree with my categorization? So liberal democracy is a
yes.
yeah.
So I largely agree. Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt?
Yeah.
So he did some studies, for those who are not familiar, that show that right wingers are pretty good at putting themselves in the shoes of left wingers, but not the other way around, because the left wingers, so the right wingers have like other dimensions by which they judge morality. They have 5. Liberals and left wingers have 2. And so when the right winger makes a decision that doesn't maximize these 2, the left winger assumes they're either evil or dumb. And so when they try to put themselves in the shoes of a right winger, they assume that right winger to be evil or dumb, and so they can't do it effectively. And so I agree with you completely. And they truly believe that they are the safeguarders of these values, and that the right wing in Israel fundamentally disagrees with those values. And so that's why, like, it's their banner, because they are the keepers of Israeli democracy, and without them, there would be no Israeli democracy. We would devolve into a theocracy or something along those lines.
Yeah,
I disagree with that, obviously.
So yeah, again, I think it seems to me, at least, that the problem is that they are the people, they're making the correct arguments and they have the wrong solution, right? It is true that there needs to be a limitation on what the voters get to decide, but the solution that they're offering is that we get to decide that limitation, and we decide what reasonable means. We decide who gets to decide that, instead of making the public, even with delay, even with difficulty, have the judicial branch be a reflection of, because the whole point of the modern nation state is to have a nation with a state that is a reflection of the nation. So certain elements of that state could be an immediate reflection, and certain elements of the state could be a delayed reflection of the nation, so that we could preserve the principles and the values that work. But either way, all of the state needs to be a reflection of the nation. So if you have elements of the state that is completely independent from what the people want, then you are violating the whole principle of the point of the nation state. It goes against nationalism. In fact, I think that maybe these judges are also trying to take Israel closer to a dictatorship. You know what I mean? Because they're accusing Netanyahu of taking Israel closer to a dictatorship. But if you have elements of the state, which is not even with the delay, never a reflection of the nation, and you're just basically self-appointing yourself, then that is too. I mean, I believe that there should be some undemocratic parts of the state, but that is too undemocratic, because undemocratic just means delayed reflection. It shouldn't be zero reflection. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But then the issue is, like, okay, how do you get it with the way the regime is currently set up? There are problems, fundamental problems.
Can you bring your camera a little bit lower, because the chat is right in your face? Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There.
Also, like, I did this, and there's this weird thing behind me. Because this is not my room. I'm at my in-laws', and one of them is an artist, and he has a lot of posters.
That's cool. It's cool to look at. So go on. So go ahead. And also, we're behind on the chat, so let's go.
Yes.
Say what you want to say, and then let's go.
I just as you were talking, I went through it and started some things that might be relevant. Okay. Anger everyone equals pragmatic common sense. Flesh Interloper said this when we said that, Armin, you're angering both sides. Saying things I agree with. And so, yes, I agree with that as well.
Was I?
Yeah, because you said, well, you can't have a tyranny of the majority. It's ridiculous to claim that that's not a thing. But also you claim, well, the judges can't just choose themselves. And I agreed with both. And then each one of those statements angered one of the sides.
Oh, so you're saying I managed to anger both sides of this discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
And for the record, I agree with you.
As usual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Delay is key function of second house. I agree with that also. So when you have two houses, one of them serves as a check on the other, and so that manages to that separates that requires something to be big enough, and a consensus for it to change if you need both houses for something.
Interesting.
Next, Bomber of Doom asked, personal or based on international law? I'm not sure. I think you started this. Do you remember what it was about?
I didn't. You started. So personal decisions are made. So I think you're saying the judges, should they be able to decide these things based on their own personal?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Or make it
so they would argue it depends on what the decision is. There is no international law about how Israel should look like internally as a regime. There is no law to draw from. Sometimes there was a judge that drew from poetry, chose a poem that they liked, and used that in the.
Wow.
Yeah.
And also international law anti-Israeli?
Fundamentally, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to go by that.
But sometimes they do. Some decisions were made on the basis of international law, and those were specifically the ones that harmed Israelis' security, and which by itself, which by itself is fine. You're allowed, you can do that. It's just that you have to be accountable if you do. For example, or they aimed at strengthening an abstract equality. So, for example, you can't. You have, if the army wanted to build shelters in specific schools in the south from rocket fire from Gaza. This was again before October 7th. And they did it based on a risk assessment. And then the judiciary was like, well, no, we have equality as a value, which, by the way, is not instantiated anywhere in law in Israel, equality. Because of this specific reason, because of the way it would be used by the judiciary. But they said, no, you have to be equal in terms of having universal democracy. So you have to put it on all the schools in the region, not taking into account budgets and stuff. But they just make the decisions, and they're not accountable after they make it. There's no one to come back to, them and say, listen, this was bad.
So they're the people who want to have. They are the people who want to add accountability for everyone but themselves.
Right. Basically, I mean,
they want to hold everyone accountable, but nobody should hold them accountable. That's basically a summary,
right?
Yeah.
At the same time, the other side that is trying to say, listen, we don't need as much oversight. Just try to elect Netanyahu and Likud personal lawyer.
Just trust me. Just trust us. We know what we're doing. Just trust us. That's what's.
Yeah, right? But we know that we can't trust the legislative.
Yeah,
we can't just give them a blank slate. We do need some safeguards. They just have to be actually instantiated in principles as opposed to the judge's personal opinion.
No, I'm saying the judges are also saying I was
right. No, I know
the judges. The judges are the judges are basically saying you can't trust anybody in this country. You need us, and then they're saying trust us just because we say so. That's what
right. I know. I agreed with you, and I said, but on the flip side, the legislative just proved by choosing someone who's personally close to Netanyahu and the Likud party as the comptroller, who's in charge of making reports on how the country is functioning. They made him over a very reasonable other choice that isn't you need oversight.
I think we agree. Here's the thing. I agree with both sides of this, and I disagree with both sides. I think, hold on, wait, don't highlight that when I'm saying. Think that I think we need oversight for the executive and the legislative. That is true, but we also need oversight for the judiciary, and they don't have that. That's
yeah,
exactly.
I completely agree with that. And there are ways to set up the laws that would, for example, strengthen the legislative at the expense of the executive. That would make it much, much better. Those would be better ways of doing it. But unfortunately, the way the the reform was basically, we're going to take the power from the judiciary and just lower it, and we're not going to balance it anywhere else. Which is not to say that they didn't want to, but it was just poorly thought out in those terms, and so rightfully got backlash.
All right, let's go through the super chats and everything is growing. Let's go through them, and then because we might run it. Yeah.
So Shauna says, "Thank you for the super chat. I like age limits better than term limits for Supreme Court because it keeps the delay in place and is closer to the spirit of the law in that its origin is until death." Okay, I see what it's instead of until death, it's until a cap.
So here's the thing. What Shauna is saying is could be the best model. Okay, one thing I do think that we should do though is rely on empirical evidence, because a lot of, like, when it comes to social sciences and politics and economics, a lot of things, like when you think about it, you feel like, oh, that would make things better because it intuitively or philosophically thinks that would work, and then
rationally,
but our intuitions are so bad at figuring out what works. So what we need is empirical evidence. But the problem with empirical evidence is that we don't have that many, like, we don't like there's not that enough countries trying things, A/B testing these things on a regular basis. So the empirical data is very limited. You know what would solve that, guy? AI. Maybe AI could run. Maybe AI could have some run simulations and that's why we might be it. We might be the simulations that other people are running to figure out how to run their societies. Anyways, we're moving away.
Okay, yeah. So, tiny bit on philosophy. First of all, I completely disagree with you about simulation theory. At some point we should talk about this. But you are making a very conservative point, like Burkean conservative. Like, you need to see what practically works as opposed to what you think rationally should work, because you might have wrong assumptions. Because of that, I'm not sure that AI would be the solution, because AI would also be making assumptions implicitly in its simulations. And
no, it doesn't need to make assumptions. It needs to just run a society and based on different models and just see
but based on different models, you're running a society based on criteria by which a society is run. This happens and this doesn't happen, and so on. And those will be implicit within the simulation.
We could talk about that later.
Yeah, that's a bigger point. Okay.
Yes, we are planning.
22nd Okay. So Justin Lefevre, and thank you for the super chat, is saying the 22nd.
Guys, wait, guys. We need to make our societies run better, or else we're gonna get removed from the. They're gonna delete us. Yeah, we're gonna delete us, guys. Make it work, or else they're gonna delete us and they're gonna keep the one that is running. But anyways, go on. Sorry.
So Justin Lefevre says the 22nd Amendment is actually entirely unconstitutional. The three branches of government are supposed to be separate but equal. How can one branch impose term limits on another and still be equal? I disagree with this, because the judiciary also can impose things on the legislative, if I understand correctly. I'm not an expert on U.S. constitutional law.
How is that a contradiction? If they could all put some limits on each other, wouldn't that be
that's what I'm saying?
It equal? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
If you make it equal by all of them being having checks and balances on the other ones,
yes, they all affect each other, not each one acts on its own. That's not a balance of powers.
If A limits B and B has no effect on A, that would not be equal. But if they all check each other, then that would make it. I mean, that's an attempt to make them equal. Obviously, you're not going to get equal. It's something to try to get to. Yeah.
This is like saying rock, paper, scissors is unequal, because scissors clearly beats paper. That's not taking into account. Yeah,
that's a good analogy. That's a really good analogy. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like that's not taking into account.
But Justin, that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. Okay, and then next we have Fleshy Interloper. Are we all politics nerds? This channel is called Liberty Politics.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think was happening here?
No, I think he's just celebrating it. I think he's just
Oh,
asking to
okay.
celebrate
Okay,
it. I
good.
think he's just celebrating how nerdy we are being.
Yes,
And
we're
politics.
definitely politics nerds. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat by Shane Loper.
Yeah, thank you.
Saved in Virginia. I can't even imagine not having a constitution. It's all I'm used to, and I'm so thankful for it. I mean, I've never lived under a constitution, so I don't know what it would be like. Armin, do you have anything to say to this?
No, I just started that so for more Americans to appreciate
Yes,
this, because I
absolutely.
think Americans don't understand how lucky they are.
Yes, you have very clear answers to these questions. It might be up to interpretation, but in Israel we don't even have the answers. It's a like free for all, so it's chaotic. Oh damn it! I unstarred 2 super chats accidentally instead of pressing them. Saeed said confetti, which is correct. I think.
Yeah, say it. I think it was say it.
Sayed. Yes, Sayed. Okay.
You unstarred 2? I have them here.
I unstarred Saeed and then the next one.
Say it. Hold on, let
Say
me
it.
see. Sayed just gave us a super chat saying confetti because we got to 10 out of 10. Thank you, Sayed. And then Wyatt gave us a super chat saying, let me select this one, saying, does Israel have a Bill of Rights?
No. So we have no. What we have is basic laws. One of those is the basic law of man's right to dignity and liberty, which sort of acts as our Bill of Rights, especially by the Supreme Court. They supercharged it with a lot of stuff that wasn't there in order to justify striking down non-basic laws. But that's what we have for a Bill of Rights. By the way, this is relevant. The Supreme Court then, like the legitimization of striking down laws was based on basic laws because they're meant to be constitutional. But then they started striking down basic laws for being unconstitutional. But they don't, like, how do you do that? If you have basic laws, those are supposed to be what the Constitution would be. So there's like a bunch of play there that is not very democratic in the sense of, like, there's a clear process for how things work. It's too subjective and up to the justices' interpretation. Do you want to try saying it?
Yes. No.
So so Armin says, no, I delete the name. I think you can do the name. It sounds a bit French.
Wait. Sorry, what is the question? Or did you ask me if I want to read this? What did you ask again?
No, just the name. Just the name of the person asking.
Okay. Lior. Okay, sorry. I thought you asked me if you wanted to try to read this. I was like, how would I even start?
No, you would not be able to, and I'll translate it.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Lior. So, thank you, Lior.
Yeah. So
wait, you should say it too. Lior.
Yeah. Lior. Yeah. So you're making it a bit too French, but it's close enough. You're saying like Lior.
Lior. I need to hold. I need a glass of wine to hold every time I
yeah, exactly.
Lior.
So Lior is asking, I'll say in Hebrew and then I'll translate. איפה אתה רואה את ישראל בעוד 5 שנים? האם אתה צופה שהפוליטיקה תהיה שונה מאוד ממה שהיא היום? So the question is, where do you see Israel in 5 years? Do you predict that politics would be very different than it is today? It's a good question. I think it would be different in the sense that it's not going to be as hyper-partisan. I think both, like, there's a movement in Israel of the different sects are affecting each other. And also, once Netanyahu retires from politics in 5 years, and after some changes have already been made, and like the veto on him and the veto on what he represents will also have subsided, and you will be able to have center governments that agree on many things. Like, it's crazy how little of a Like in most countries, you have a very wide net of opinions. In Israel, most people are somewhere here. But then, like, you have the boundary here of like pro Netanyahu or anti Netanyahu, and then you have people here, and they just can't seat with each other in the same government, even though, by all accounts, they should be able to. Their differences are way smaller than differences by people who sit together in like European parliaments. So I predict centrist governments would be more probable, and it might already start this election.
Oh wow, interesting. Okay, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Motorride. You can't impeach judges in Israel in the Supreme Court. This is correct. There is no process right now by which you can force a judge out of. That was part of the reform. There was supposed to be. It was supposed to be doable, but it would have to be like there were checks on it already in the original offer, in the original not offer, in the original legislation. Next we have Aleph 1 Mem 4 TAF 4. So I want to correct this. Not yet, supposed to be November, but they are trying to rush it. Notice that the language here is like they're being malicious. They're they're trying to rush it. Unless something happened in the last 24 hours where I haven't listened to the news. So the election was always supposed to be late October. And they're not trying to rush it. No one's trying to rush it. They're actually trying to finish the term. But then you see, like, okay, they passed a law to break apart the parliament. And if your mind is such that, and if I'm misunderstanding you, by the way, feel free to correct me in the chat. But if your mind is such that whatever this government does is malicious, then you're going to paint every decision in those terms. So they're trying to live out their term. How dare they not be accountable to the people after October 7th? They're trying to break apart the parliament. Oh, they're trying to rush it. Maybe like it sounds like there's something malicious behind it. And just that's what I would call BDS in terms of like TDS. Like whatever decision is made, you judge because of the person who did it. You judge it to be malicious without looking at the decision as a decision. Like, well, what if someone else made it? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, that was interesting. Okay.
Ariksan, thank you for the super chat.
No.
Is saying we need monarchy. Can we have one of your princesses, Armin?
No, I'm sorry. No. No.
To be fair, you have more than one, so you can share. You just refused.
We need backup. And
that is true.
Yeah. Would monarchy work for Israel? Constitutional monarchy?
Actually, I thought about this recently. So there's no way you would be able to implement it right now because it would look like, well, you're trying to steal democracy. But technically speaking, if you go by Jewish law and like precedent, then that was what we had. Now you could turn the president into a monarch. The president right now is the symbolic role that doesn't actually hold power. He hands the person who will start the government. Like he decides which member of parliament has the highest likelihood of starting government after each election. That's his role. But that's the symbolic role that we have. Some people are saying we should abolish the presidency. I think symbolic roles are important, so I disagree with that. But in principle, a monarchy should work in Judaism. Although you can also argue, well, I give you a king just because you asked for one, because you looked at all the places around us, and you shouldn't actually, like, it's not an inherent part of Jewish law to have a king. Okay. Next we have Amir. Thank you for the super chat with 15 shekels. Amir is saying, my most selfish free Iran. I need a country, un-Islamic, that build on education, good values, and culture. So I think what he's saying is that if Israel goes to shit, and knowing Amir probably because of this government, or people like this government, but correct me if I'm wrong, Amir, I need a place to go to that I would trust. I kind of also sort of hold this position in terms of like, well, let's say the people who hate us get their way and they delegitimize Israel and try to break it up and so on, and we'll be refugees again. I don't want to go to Europe. I don't want to go to America. Like at this point, America will have already become anti-Semitic. I don't want to do any of that. And then I think, okay, well, what place will I be able to go to where I'd feel safe? And the answer is a free Iran.
But Israel is not going to. Is this a genuine worry? I'm very optimistic about the future of Israel.
So you have to understand that Israelis, myself included, are post-traumatic after October 7th. Like, oh, wow, that's what they want to do. And that's what they're actually trying to do. And if they get their way, they will do it. And so there's like an existential crisis.
I mean, that has always been there. You know,
yes,
before October 7th, I used to say on my channel that people don't understand how much anti-Jewish hatred exists as we're speaking, just waiting for its chance to come out. And I said something will happen, and all of this anti-Jewish hatred that is now beneath the surface of many societies will come out with a vengeance at some point and it show itself. And I had Jews disagreeing with me, telling me like, Armin, like that era is gone. And I remember after October 7th,
I would have been one of them.
Really? Okay. I remember after October 7th, people came to me and they saw what's happening in the world, and they're like, okay, Armin, you were right about that, right? So that has always been there. That has always been there. But I also think that Israel is not going to let that. Like Israel, I'm very optimistic. I think people are underestimating how, you know, for me, everything power, like culture and military power is all a downstream from economic power. And I think Israel is on the right path. I think Israel is getting stronger and stronger every single year.
So a couple things on that. First of all, I would have been one of those people. I thought anti-Semitism was like way overstated by Jews in America. And I think sometimes it still is, but it's also there. Like, I understand why their threshold is so low, because it is actually there, very much so, way more than I thought. But also there's a difference between knowing something in principles and abstract and then having like a friend of yours actually die at the hands of the terrorists in October 7th because he was in the Nova Festival, which happened to me. I mean, happened to him, but I know someone who was there who died.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And like it hits you differently when it's no longer abstract, and you're like, there was a feeling that Israel is a fortress and impenetrable, and then it was penetrated, and then you see what happens when it's penetrated, and that's super scary. And at the same time, a lot of our power comes from in my mind, came from, generally speaking, international legitimacy, and that's being eroded consciously, perniciously by our enemies.
Okay, two things to say to that. Israel will suffer again, but it will not collapse, and it will always keep getting stronger, even with events like October 7th. I don't want to belittle October 7th, and I don't want to dismiss how big of an event it is. But what I'm trying to point out is it's one thing for you to be wounded, severely wounded, but it's another thing for you to even get remotely close to a collapse. You know what I mean? And I don't think even right at the middle of October 7th, I don't think Israel even came close to that.
I don't think so either.
Right.
But I think the next 20 years, like the broad hate of Israel that has been orchestrated by our enemies. I mean, if we replace the regime in Iran,
you called it international what? International legitimacy? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah. Legitimacy by other countries.
So here's what I think. Okay, and I think most of you might disagree with me. And Samantha would probably call me a dirty, evil capitalist. But I think that international legitimacy comes from economic power, comes from the purchasing power of your society, comes from the trade that you do, comes from And I think that outshadows everything else. At the end of the day, if you have economic leverage, you will win. And you will like it doesn't like I do think that people attacking Israel, demonizing Israel, that itself is financially motivated at the end of the day, if you look at all of it.
I agree.
Okay. So, and I think that they hurt Israel, but because it's all battle of economic battles, and they're getting poorer and Israel is getting richer, Israel will win this. And international legitimacy, at the end of the day, no matter how much people demonize you, if you have the money, that's the most powerful source of legitimacy.
Right. But so I agree with that. It is a problem, though, the loss of legitimacy. And then if you have like a bunch of rich countries that see that we're losing legitimacy and they also have power, so for example, Turkey is very strong. If Turkey manages to convince people it's right in attacking Israel and it's not going to get pushback, that could be a problem. We'd win right now, and like moving into the future.
So yeah, these are short-term losses. I think long-term it looks good.
I probably agree with that, but the fear is still there, and because it's an existential fear, it keeps gnawing at me.
Yeah. Somebody's saying Armin, money.
Move on to
somebody's saying Armin, money is relative. Money might be relative, but wealth is not.
Good point.
We should go through.
Yeah, let's finish the super chats because you have to go and I also have to go too.
Yeah, I have to go now. Yeah, that's
right. Okay. So Shauna, thank you for the super chat, says, what do you think about a monarchy for Israel? We actually talked about this.
Yes. Thank you, Shauna, for the super
chat.
Thank you,
Shauna. I'm so glad I found you guys. I love learning. Oh, thank you, Amber. So Amber Lee Rose said this.
Yes. Make sure you subscribe to Guy.
Yes. Let's quickly, before we wrap it up.
And highlight.
This is my channel.
That, yeah. Yes. So guys,
subscribe
link
for more.
Yes. Subscribe. Let me put the link in the chat. The link is also in the description. So go check it out.
Yeah.
And also
after we're done, we're going to do a collab. We're going to turn this into a collab.
Yes. Ask me for the link every time. Okay. And send me the link as well.
Okay.
So, and also guys, like we have a new, if you want to, you should want to go and talk to Guy directly in our group calls. So you should go to our discussion group because Guy now has his own segment.
Yes.
Look at this. So you could go and talk to Guy in his own segment. So when is this?
This is Monday, 4 p.m. Israel time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern US. And then you should probably, wherever you are, you should probably be able to 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, 9 a.m. Sorry, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central, 6 a.m. Pacific. I'm sorry, Pacific, people in the Pacific.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. People could, when you go to calendar, it translates it, to your own time. So I'm going to put the link to our discussion group and then go to the calendar and look into the group calls in the calendar and find Guy's segment and go talk to him. Okay. So he's going to be talking about Israeli politics. Okay. We really need to go through the super chats.
We'll go through them rapid fast. So Zipgun2 says Israel, thank you for the super chat, says Israel is no picnic and never will be, but everywhere else is worse. If I have to die defending my Jewishness, I would want to die defending my land, not someplace else. Absolutely. I completely agree with this. I just rather not die.
That's a patriot speaking. Yes.
Yes. Wyatt Kaldenberg, $10. Many Americans think Israel won't be around in 20 years. White boomers support Israel, but we will be dead in 20 years. Young Americans and non-whites are growing more anti-Jewish every day. So that's my fear. It's hard for me to assess how dependent we are on American support. It's becoming less and less so, and we're also diversifying because we see that we can't trust Democrats anymore whatsoever. But yeah, that's the worry. Okay, then Texas Troop asks, is Guy an American? No, in fact, I've never even stepped foot in the US, and people are often shocked to hear me say this. And I don't have American parents. I don't have any relation to America beyond some maybe distant relatives. I know I sound American.
You don't have an accent. That's why people say that.
Yeah. I sound American, but I've never stepped foot in America. That's just the accent I picked up over the years listening to English. And then the last super chat. Steaks and Beans, thank you for the super chat. It is only since Oslo Agreement that the politics in Israel between left and right is about security and defense matters. Before that, there wasn't a difference between left and right about it. Probably that's what I heard as well. I wasn't around. Oslo was a year before I was born. The Oslo Agreement. We should talk at some point about the Oslo Agreement and Israel-Palestine. Maybe next time we can do like a brief history of Israel. It's probably going to be more than once. Yeah, that's a good topic. Thank you, Steaks and Beans. Give us a topic to talk about.
You gave us an idea.
Okay, and then Amberly Rose said, "I subbed to Guy. Thank you very much." And Ellen Server, is Guy an Israeli name? Yes, it is. It means valley in Hebrew. Guy Tzemavet is valley of death from the Bible.
Oh, okay.
And lastly, Carla, good morning, Armin. And member.
Good morning.
Months. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's it for us for today. We both have to
All right. Yes, we both have to go. Guys, go subscribe to Guy, and I'll see you soon and in Iran Revolution Live. So see you guys in the same channel here in about,
20 minutes.
20 minutes. Okay.
A bit guys. Less than 20 minutes. All right.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
All right, guys.
You want to do the...
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes, guys. So I'm Israel Chai, Slava Ukrainian, Cuba Libre, Long Live America, Javicha, Payande, Iran. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye. Go subscribe to Guy.
Subscribe to my channel. Yes.